All right, mic check, I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest, Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and as always, I'm looking all over the place for all the hidden gems in this country that I can find. And luckily, I found one in my native Saskatchewan. Here we have today Ben Schmidt coming to us from GWS Industrial in Saskatoon. Ben, how are you doing?
Fantastic. It was a really nice day. It looks like it might storm, but yeah, always a good day at work here.
Well, you know, I'm in Toronto right now. I'm in a hotel, as people can see if they're on YouTube. And the weather is better in Saskatchewan than here. Plus, the day before I left, we had that tornado in southern Saskatchewan. So
Right, yeah.
we had those crazy rains. But what's Saskatchewan without a couple thunder showers, right? Like you need some thunderstorms.
That's the best part. The thunderstorms are great here. And I mean, I was just in Mississauga not too long ago, so basically Toronto. And I like it out here a lot better. Just saying, I like the lack of traffic. So,
Who doesn't, right? Who doesn't? And the standard of living. So, are you a local Saskatchewan boy? Are you born and bred in
yeah,
Saskatchewan?
I'm born and bred in Saskatchewan. I grew up just outside of a little tiny town that nobody knows, but outside of Yorkton. So
What's the
pretty much
town?
Yorkton.
I know Yorkton area pretty good.
Well, we're basically, you know where the old radar base was?
Yeah.
So right there. So they've changed it a few times, and
Yeah, my wife's family's from that area, so
I don't know what they're calling it now. White Spruce, I think. White Spruce Youth Treatment Center.
okay, yeah. I think that sounds
Or
great.
that it could have changed. I haven't been back home in a long time. So
You're only like
it's-
3 hours away from there. You can pop over there anytime.
yeah, but you know, my life took a weird turn. When I left home, at that time there wasn't a lot of jobs in the province, and rather than go to the trades, I want, adventure, excitement, all the things that a Jedi doesn't seek, I was seeking. So I joined the army, and I never really looked back, and just never. My family left Yorkton area, and I go back there occasionally, but hasn't been for some time. But
Don't
it's
need
funny.
to.
I don't need to, but still have good connections there, right? My branch manager in Regina actually is a Yorkton boy, and he's a bit older than me, but we hung with the same crowd, so it's kind of funny that way, right? We were both big into cars, and he's still into cars, so am I. But yeah, that's Michael Linick, and he's in our Regina location.
Olenek, there's a very Ukrainian name for the eastern Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Definitely the Yorkton area. But yeah, so I traveled a bit, and just a bit of a background on me. I joined the Army as a combat engineer. So I found landmines for a living and other explosive devices, and loved that. I was fortunate to have an exposure to the trades before I joined the military. When I got out, I got my red seals in both machining and millwrights. I've been welding since I was a young kid. Always been fascinated by welding, but that's the one ticket I never got.
Mhm.
And I'm really, I have the opportunity with one of our customers actually in Regina to at some point take the CWB tests, and I'm
Go for it,
nervous as all, but he says go for it. He's like, you'll definitely pass it. So I'm really thinking about it, right? But yeah, so that's kind of my background. And
Well, let's
when
back up because I'm curious.
Sure.
You know, you're a kid growing up in small town Saskatchewan. There's not a lot of services in those areas, you know, and you got a double red seal, but the way red seals work, you got to get one before the other. So when you were coming out of high school, were you already thinking trades? Were you already thinking this or that? Or what was the family push for you to do?
well, kind of, I got lucky when I was a kid. I got an opportunity to work in a machine shop as a kid. So I got a lot of hours in the machine shop. And as you know, in like trades, you don't have to have a red seal to be a machinist, but it definitely helps. So I got all those hours, and I wasn't thinking trades. I was actually, it's interesting you brought that up. I was thinking about that, but just previous to this is what happened. In high school, apparently I'm smart, and I was on the academic track.
Now, did your mom tell you that, or did a teacher tell you that?
No, the teachers told me I wasn't allowed to take shop classes,
Oh,
right?
really?
Because you're on the academic track. And all I want to do is take shop classes. And in my grade 12 year, because I had enough credits, I took a couple shop classes, which is kind of funny. If these teachers are listening, they'll know. They kicked me out of their classes because, I mean, I'd be running lathes and mills about 12 or 14 years old. So high school machine shop, they knew I'd just screw around, and they're probably right. It probably would have. And even the welding class, like, I mean, I was bored the first day of welding class, so I'm doing position and whatnot because it's something I really enjoy doing. But I did have a great teacher, and he's still out there, and he's interesting how it circles back. He's one of my branch manager's good friends, and I'm going to give him a shout out because I'm sure he changed a lot of kids' lives. His name was Don Tkachuk, and took auto body, grade 10 auto body in grade 12. And he challenged me, and I really did a lot of interesting MIG welding on thin panels there. So, but yeah, like when I was coming through school, it was, I hate this term. It was always work smart, don't work hard. And that's not, I don't get that. Work hard and smart. There's something to be said to work in a hard day. And now look at, we're shortage of people, right? Both in the machine trade, welding, all trades really. Like I pushed my kid, I got an 8-year-old kid. I'm like, let me teach you to weld. So in high school, rather than getting a job flipping a burgers, I know a dozen shops that are just looking for labor.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to go to university, great.
You're gonna make more money than your friends working at the burger shop. Like, I mean, I did 2 weeks at Dairy Queen, and I was like, no, this ain't for me.
Right. You're going to make more money, and it does have downsides. Like, it's hard work and it's dirty, and you're going to burn yourself. But you're make more money. You want to go to university. Like I heard I don't know how long ago of the podcast was you're doing, but there was a job out in BC paying like $130 an hour or something like that.
Yeah, Kitimat, yeah.
Yeah. So you do that for 3 years, your university's paid for. You're coming out of university with zero debt.
Yeah.
Right. Not that you have to go to university, but that's the way. And there's something to be said about working a good hard day and working smart throughout that day. Anybody tells you that tradespeople are dumb, they've never worked in the trades, man. Like,
no.
It's crazy. I've worked with engineers. I'm sure you've worked with engineers. And when you go, I have a bad engineer story, whereas like the tolerance was a 1/4 inch. I'm like, yeah, it's 250 thou. We're within tall, right? And it's like, no, it has to be a 1/4 inch. Like a 1/4 inch is 250 thousandths, dude. Right? Because you're doing that. You're doing math. You're doing complicated stuff, geometry. And I don't know a trade that doesn't do that. Our retail organization, Great Western Saw, we deal with a lot of carpentry and woodworking trades, and those guys are doing just as much math as anybody else. Metal workers, I mean, it's all math, right? So,
well, let me tell you, most people that go to university end up doing jobs with no math, unless it's like a specifically math trade, like accounting or engineering or something.
right.
But I mean, you're gonna, like, you go into a government office and you see how much math's being done, and it's like basically zero. Like, so it's just a bureaucracy. But when you're talking about you being the smart kid and them being like, no, we're gonna push you towards university. Did you feel like you wanted to push back, like being like, no, like, or were you like, oh, this is my role in life, this makes everyone happy?
I did. I wanted to learn, right? And I like working with my hands, and I like building things. And if I was going to university, I was going to go be a mechanical engineer. And like, I'm not boasting, but I was in the smart kids class. And my other buddy, who's now actually in the media business, he went to school for mechanical engineer, and after the first year, or second year, he dropped out of university, right? And if I would have went right out of high school, I look back. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20. I could have done really well. I could have come to university here in Saskatoon. I could have got a job anywhere in a shop, working part-time and pay my way to university and come out of there with that degree. But I never thought about that. It was always, you go to university, then you go to university track, or you go trades and you go the trades track. And I don't know, that's not, I don't agree with that, right?
No.
And it's, I worked in the oil patch and after I got out of the Army, which was great because it was very much like the Army, except we got fed better and shot at a little less. But
just a little.
But again, you make good money, and it's nothing wrong with that life. There are trade-offs. There's trade-offs to everything, right?
There's going to be a balance, right?
But it's interesting. Welding and machine metalworking. I'm a metal guy. I love to weld. I love to make things out of metal. I make bike frames and like motorcycle frames and you name it. And I've always done that. Growing up as a kid, we had a neighbor who had an arc welder, like an old ancient arc welder. And this guy built anything and everything. And I was in awe of that. Like he built a tractor. He built a little Caterpillar with tracks. And I'm like, if this guy can do it because he has a welder, well, I need to learn how to weld, right? So the stuff that it opens up for you, and it's, I worked in the trades, fixing machine tools and doing the millwright thing and whatnot. And I loved it. It was, you had to think and you had to weld and you got to build things and fix things. And you're always, I enjoyed the challenge, right?
So timeline wise, right? Back to the timeline. You're coming out of high school. What did you sign up for?
So coming out of high school, there was no jobs and I thought I couldn't afford university. So I actually joined the reserves. I joined 1-8 Field Battery.
So that was first step into the Army. Yeah.
That was the first step into the Army. I had been in cadets before that. I went to Shiloh. I got on what they call a Class C contract, which is basically your full-time Army job. And the gunners are going to hate me for this, but we were sitting there digging a hole for a gun, for a howitzer. And across the way, I see this heavy equipment excavators digging. I'm like, what is up with this? Because I'm on a shovel, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, why can't they dig? Because I was young and I was cocky and whatnot. And I was like, oh, those are the combat engineers. I'm like, well, what do they do? And the lieutenant's like, well, they blow up bridges and they build bridges and they defuse bombs. I'm like, wait, they blow up stuff? They use explosives? How do I become a combat engineer? He's like, are you serious? And I'm like, yeah. So we'll sign this line and go Red Force combat engineering. Way I went, right? And I
ironically, today, I already spoke to someone whose son is a combat engineer and now works in a private demolitions company out in Victoria.
right.
What are the odds? What are the odds of two?
That's
in one
crazy,
day?
eh?
Yeah.
And depending how old he is, I might actually know him, right? But I loved it. I loved the Army. It was a life. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle. But again, you work hard. You got to be smart. Combat engineers, you got to think of doing demolitions. There's calculations and whatnot. Funny enough, I got to weld as a combat engineer because we had a piece of equipment called a Badger, which is basically a Leopard tank with an excavator bucket on it and an arc welder on the side. So when we were overseas, let's just say I built some interesting things while we were there out of pickets and whatnot. That we built some catapults and stuff like that, right? But no, it's combat engineer was a great trade. I got hurt overseas, so I had to look at something different and left the military.
So what is a combat engineer? Is a very broad term. So engineer is basically behind any trade. It's the thinking part. So what does a combat engineer engineer?
Engineers kind of it depends on what level you get to. So really, your job is you build. If you really go to the technical military term, our mission is to deny mobility and from the enemy and provide mobility to friendly. So you're doing roads, you're doing bridges, you're doing water treatment, you're doing accommodations, demolitions, EOD stuff, right? So basically, your engineering is doing like the Lego bridges, the MGB bridges, or back in my day, to date myself, the Bailey bridges. And that's there's stuff there to do. And you're booby trapping and diffusing booby traps. Basically, I got paid to go camp and do farm chores is what I always tell people, because it was kind of like being a farmer, except I didn't grow stuff. You fix equipment, do a lot of equipment maintenance. It was great.
And was there like a formal schooling behind this, like classroom setting, training time? Does it school
you go through
you
go through what they call a threes training at the time, which was at CFSME, and at that time it was still in Chilliwack. They've moved it now out east, and that's your combat engineer course, and it's about so the military is weird, hey, like everybody thinks soldiers aren't that bright, but the military changes the way you think and the way you learn, and they pack into 6 months what a civilian course would put into 4 years. Right, it's really intense and it's hard training, and at that time, if you don't make it, they cut you. You're gone. We had a thing called the man-eating truck, and during my threes course, I lived in fear of the man-eating truck. because they put somebody on the man-eating truck and you never see them again. And Chilliwack was a small base, right? Like, what do they do to these guys? And you're a kid, you don't know, right? And then as you progress in the trade, you do a fives training, which is more where you're doing concrete and some other things. And there's just definitely classrooms when you're in garrison, when you're not out doing an exercise or overseas, you're continually training. So in the military, you're continually training, right? And it was good training. There's a lot of other aspects from the military that I took with me, is like the leadership training. My old training sergeant, who's a buddy of mine, he once said, like, there's a reason that you go to where you go in your jobs, is because the military's invested a ton of money into your leadership training, right? Work ethic, attitude, right? And really, the trades and the military are very similar, because in the military we have a term, embrace the suck, right? So no matter how bad it gets, all right, make it harder. We'll get this done. And when you work in the trades, you work in the oil patch, you work with a bunch of guys, and when it gets real and it's getting tough, the guys who make it are the guys who are like, all right, they embrace it and away we go, right? And just get the job done.
Yeah, there's no quit. There's no walking away from it and being like, well, I guess we didn't figure it out. That's not going to happen now.
And that never happens on the job site. And that's such a rewarding feeling, right? So in the environment I'm working now, sometimes I'm probably not the nicest manager, because I come from that background and I'm like, look, get it done. I don't want excuses. Just make it happen, right? And of course I got all those awesome military sayings, like excuses are like assholes. Everybody's got one and they stink, and all that stuff, right? But it's just a different mindset. So, like I said, the military had nothing to do with the trade background for me in a lot of ways, and in some ways it did, because you're doing equipment maintenance, so you're still pulling wrenches, and you're
skills and skills, all skill stack. And a term that gets thrown around a lot loosely is lifelong learner. But usually when people talk about lifelong learning, they're talking about their track. So a university professor will be like, oh, make sure you're a lifelong learner. They're talking about going to get your bachelor's, then your master's, and your doctorate. When you talk about people in the trades, being a lifelong learner means moving up to the next step, get your next credential. But I think the real key is what you're talking about here. Lifelong learning means that wherever the path may go, the military, university, trades, sports, music, all these different things, they're all skills.
They're all skills. And they all apply to everything.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And learning those skills and be able to apply them it's very rewarding, personally rewarding, right? That's why I tell people I have my dream job. And a lot of people say that, but I mean it. Like, I literally am living the dream. As we talked about when we started this here, I actually look forward to my toughest days, because I enjoy it. I enjoy what I do. It's crazy.
Well, before we get to what you do, you come out of the Army. How long were you in the Army for?
Just shy of 8 years, but by the time I got out, 10 years.
Okay, so then you're a pensioned vet. You're full service.
The big $260 a month. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but it is what it is. You are considered a legit vet, right? So, this is, and it's very different in Canada for the vets system as opposed to the U.S. I've had a number of vets here in the U.S. that, some of them are like 6 months and they're a vet. In Canada, it's a little bit different. You got to do at least 3 years, I believe, on contract.
Yeah, 3-year contract. And
so you get out, you don't have any hours, or can you take the hours from military and apply them to a trade, or did you have to start from scratch there?
So I had a bit of hours from when I was 18 before I joined the trade, and I went through this little program in Kindersley, Saskatchewan, of all places, like a pre-employment machining program. So that helped a little bit. The military equipped me with a bunch of, they sent me to university for some skills and whatnot, and I did well. The job I got after that, it wasn't for me. A desk job at that time in my life was not for me. I mean, you got to remember, I was a combat troop. I was an airborne troop. Bit of an adrenaline problem. Like, I mean, I still ride motorcycles, but at the time I used to like race motorcycles, climb mountains, frickin' skydive, as well as military paratroop, because let's just make it as dangerous as possible. And
just throw that in the salad.
Yeah. So when I got out, I had some medical issues. I had some balance issues and whatnot. So everybody was like, well, you can't do this. You're not going to ride a motorcycle ever again. You'll be lucky if you if you can walk unassisted, you're not going to be able to drive. And so like it took me 2 years to get out of the military, and that was when they tell you that it's a blow, right? And I don't know. I'm lucky with the military courses that I accomplished. I took what I learned there. I'm like, screw that. I can do what I want to do. And I started riding motorcycles again, and I started doing stuff, and I was looking for a job. And a buddy of my time worked in the oil patch. I was living in Edmonton at the time because that's where the last posting was. And he got me on with a directional drilling company. And I was like, oh, woohoo. And I progressed from there. They basically apprenticed me. Some things were fast tracked.
And this is the apprenticeship for machining.
The first one was millwrighting.
Okay, first one's millwrighting. Got it.
Yeah, and then when this was before the boom in Estevan, and they were just opening up a place in Estevan, and they couldn't get people to go to Estevan. I'm like, well, frick, I'll go back there. Like, and not knowing Estevan, because at the time I didn't really live in Estevan. I'd driven through it, and I moved to Estevan. And I was very fortunate because when I moved to Estevan, I just transferred over to the Saskatchewan Trades and Apprenticeship. And the time, I can't remember his last name, Larry was head of the machining program. And this guy knew every machinist in the province, like everyone had gone through him. And he had knew the shop that I worked in is during my high school years and when I was younger. And he was able to, because I was pretty much more advanced in like a first or second year. I mean, I had a lot of skill set. He was able to work with their apprentice board and get a lot of extra hours for me. And I got that machining ticket like weeks after I wrote my red seal for my millwright. So
did you have to do the practical exam and everything for the red seal?
I did for the machining. And I'm gonna boast here. It was good. It was I had fun. I enjoyed it, right? But that's the thing. I enjoyed that kind of work, right? What I did find though is I had to take some classes, and this goes back to that whole, either you're the academic track or the trades track. And some of these guys, when I was taking classes at the time here, it was called SciAS, now it's SAS Polytech. And the math classes, these guys were struggling. So we used to go to a coffee shop, and the deal was they bought me a mochaccino, and I helped them with the math. And I'm like, guys, like, you're doing bolt circles and stuff all day at work. Like, this math is simple, but it wasn't the way they were teaching the wrong way. Yeah, it wasn't taught. My biggest example was, I can't remember the question, but the answer, you're making so many parts an hour. At the end of the day, how many parts did you make? And the answer is like 8.4. So how many parts did you make? You made 8. Yeah. Because your boss ain't going to count 0.4 of a part. Yeah. Right. And that's the difference between school math and trade math, I guess. Right. So, but yeah, it was so I got my tickets. I worked in the oil patch a little bit longer. I ended up working, doing millwrighting on basically machine tools. So, the CNC lathes and mills and the standard ones, which was, for me, it was like a kid in a candy store. Like, I'm not going to.
It's fun. And they're not that complex, but there's a lot of parts in there.
They're not that complex, but they got to be like dead on balls accurate, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, you work through a thousandth of an inch or finer tolerances. That's cool. That's awesome. And I got to use all my skill sets. Like, I got to use project planning and, all that. And then because downtime is horrible. You don't want downtime for the customer. I got machines not making money, and I could do some welding. I could do a bit of this. And when we were slow, because I don't like to be bored. And if I'm bored, that's when bad things happen, because I can't be bored, right? I have to be doing something. So when we were slow, I used to answer the phone call for the sales guys because I was bored, right? And I found, talking to the customer, because they would call in and they'd say, well, I'm running this insert and I'm going through a lot of them. Like, well, what are you cutting? What's your speeds and feeds? And I had the knowledge to go, hey, why don't you try like this type of insert? Or why don't we, because this is, and I could apply that, and they appreciated it, right? Because it wasn't a sales guy talking to him. It was a guy who's been on the tools. Times got slow again, and my boss said, well, I'm going to lay you off, but you should look for a job in sales. And I never, we've all had that bad experience with a sales guy. I was like, I don't want to be
a car salesman. I don't want to be selling snake oil.
Right. But but I got into sales, and actually they moved me to Regina, and it was janitorial supplies of all things, so nothing to do with anything. Um, and I knew nothing about janitorial supplies, like nothing. So I had to learn, and I knew nothing about sales. So I listened to a lot of audiobooks and stuff while I was driving all through everywhere in Saskatchewan, all these small towns and First Nations and whatnot. And customers are great. You know, if you talk to a customer and you legitimately tell them, I don't know, teach me, they'll teach you so you can help them out. And then you learn from each customer, and then you're like, well, you know, this school here is using this and this. And I went from there. Like, I'm not passionate about cleaning supplies or anything. So I bounced around a few different sales jobs, and the thing was I'd always get promoted fast. Like 6 months after my first sales job, I was the sales manager for the entire company.
But is that a turnover thing too? 'Cause I always felt like sales was a lot of turnover. I might be wrong, but I feel like
There is
there's a
turnover.
perception about that.
There is a lot of turnover, but I think a lot of what that was nobody was willing to fill the leadership shoes, right? And so I didn't like being a sales manager. I'll be honest with you. I'd rather be doing sales, right? Because it's easier to control your own performance than a sales guy. But yeah, so that happened, and again, I had some health issues from previous at all. You know, my body's got a lot of miles on it, and it wasn't properly maintained. Still not properly maintained, but we're getting there. So I left that job and I bounced around a bit, and I ended up in industrial sales. And it was supposed to be a temporary job. Like I was like, hey, this will pay the bills till I can find something better, go get healthy enough to go back into the trades. And I loved it, because now I was working with the end users again. I was working with the welding shops, the guys on the floor, the foremen and whatnot. And I was selling fasteners and industrial stuff that I knew about, that I use in my own, you know, and nothing, it's sales is always supposed to be a win-win-win. So a win for the customer, a win for the company, and a win for you. And when you're looking there and you're solving the customer's problems, that was cool, right? And my hands and whatnot, I had bad arthritis at the time, and I didn't have the dexterity. I could do the trades, but being around the trades and whatnot, and being able to actually solve those problems and use some of my previous knowledge was fantastic. And I rose in that company fairly fast. 6 months later, I was a general manager of that branch, right? And general management comes with a whole new can of worms. But I took that leadership skills, and we built a pretty good branch. But it wasn't challenging enough. And then this company had been after me for a little while, and of course I didn't know it. You know, like, a little bit blind to that. And I was for the most part I was happy. And my district manager at the time kind of annoyed me. I need strong leadership. I come from strong leadership, and there's a little bit of leadership lacking. And it's just a timing thing. On the same day, a recruiter called me for actually a plumbing supply company. And I'm like, hey, let's go down that road. And then the majority partner of this business said, I hear, like, it moves fast in the industry. He's like, I hear you're looking. And he made me an offer not too long after with ownership in the company. I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur. My dad was a businessman. You know, you look up to your dad, you want to be a business guy. And I took it. And at first, it was just Great Western Saw, which is woodwork, more retail, hobbyist garage and whatnot. And when I came here, I'm very fortunate. A lot of my customers followed me, and they're like, "We want to buy from you. Like, what can you do? How can you do this?" And my business partners, who are awesome, are like, "Hey, let's capitalize on this." And that's how GWS Industrial started. And we brought in a lot more metalworking here to Great Western Saw. We are the prime weld guys of Canada. Somehow I've earned the name Prime Weld Ben of Canada, because prime weld is, they're that lower price point welder. A lot of guys in their garage, and they're great. It's an interesting story how I found out about them and brought them in, and GW Industrial expanded. We got Fronius, which are really cool welders. Fronius is a great brand. And we're like, okay, well, there's lots of other welding companies out there that are selling to welders. How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we be better for the market? So we're specializing more in TIG welding, the specialty stuff that nobody carries, that we stock. Javelin pipe stand, strong hand. A lot of guys can get strong hand, but not a lot of guys in our province have it in store, or I can get it to Regina overnight, right? Yeah. fixturing tables and fixtures and stuff like that. And it kept expanding. And we got into automation. We got the Arc Droid, and that's both retail. We got it as a retail thing. And I was looking at it going, no, man, like I've seen mobile welders and whatnot. This is awesome for mill rates and
That's
whatnot.
interesting.
So,
I was actually looking at buying an Arc Droid for my garage because they seem so handy. Like,
oh, dude, I'm gonna after the call we should talk, because this is one of those things that I can't talk about yet because it's sitting on my desk over here. A new part to it, how we're gonna hook it all up. But for your garage, it's an amazing device. It's an amazing tool, right? The simple trace feature is great, but for guys on the road, mobile welders and whatnot, I got one guy who bought one, and he's running air compressor and everything on the truck. And instead of using a mag drill and annular cutters to drill these holes, he lays them out with the Arc Droid, hits go. Well, that thing's cutting. He's stringing out his cables.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's making him money. And having that business background and that sales background, and when guys come in here, like those mobile welders or one-man shows or even the bigger companies, I get it. You need a return on investment on these things. So yeah, the Arc Droid, phenomenal tool. I love it. I am so fortunate I get to play with one whenever I want, right? Prime weld again, if you're not, I mean, I have some shops running them, but when you can get into a 285 amp MIG welder, they'll do spray transfer for about $1,500. Great price point, great machine, right? Their TIG 225, which is what I highly recommend. They have a 325 that I drool over quite a bit. $1,300, and you got an AC/DC pulsing TIG welder. So for a guy learning in his garage, or that kid he's a welder and he wants to brush up on his skills, I've sold a number of those TIG welders to guys who are working the trades that want to expand. They want to expand their skill set. So they're working at home and they're trying TIG welding and whatnot. And that's great, right? And even just to the guys starting out, like that's
it's the best time in the world right now to start out as a welder. When I was young, it'd be a serious investment to buy tools. The
right.
price and the type of machines available now are unreal. But let's take a break here.
Sure.
We've ripped past 30 minutes, so the conversation's fantastic. We'll take a small break here for our sponsors and our collaborators and people that support us. And when we come back after the commercials, we'll continue with Ben Schmidt here from GWS, talking about what he does, because we're already getting into there, where he is, and kind of that sales side of the industry that sometimes gets ignored, but is incredibly important for all tradespeople. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The CWB Association is new and improved and focused on you. We offer a free membership with lots of benefits to anyone interested in joining an association that is passionate about welding. We are committed to educating, informing, and connecting our workforce. Gain access to your free digital publication of the Weld magazine, free online training, conferences, and lots of giveaways. Reach out to your local CWB Association chapter today to connect with other welding professionals and share welding as a trade in your community. Build your career, stay informed, and support the Canadian welding industry. Join today and learn more at cwbassociation.org.
And we are back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and we're here with Ben Schmidt from GWS Industrial, formerly Great Western Saw. I remember Great Western Saw. I remember buying parts from there and stuff like that when I was a kid. It's an old company. It's been around for a long time, isn't it?
Since 1996. And we still have our Great Western Saw side, which is more of our retail arm.
And where did it start? Did it start in Regina or Saskatoon?
It started in Saskatoon. And it started as a saw blade sharpening company.
Yeah.
You want to talk about a yucky, dirty machine shop? Go into a sharpening shop, right? And it started out as that. They eventually brought in some retail, and they were mainly woodworking. They did, they had some metalworking and whatnot. I've been a customer of here for a fair bit because I like to do a bit of woodworking on the side. And they had, the smaller lathes and the smaller mills. Not really anything into welding, but the odd little metalworking tool. Got a location in Regina as well. It's on Lawrence Street. Big Mike is our branch manager there, Michael Linick. He's been selling tools for almost as long as I've been alive. He actually he worked at House of Tools where I grew up, and I bought tools. There's a good chance I bought tools off of him.
Well, considering how gray your beard is, this guy's got to be something interesting.
Yeah, I hope he listens. He's a bit older than me, but yeah, it's not by a lot. Probably about 5 or 6 years. But again, very knowledgeable on any type of tools from woodworking to metalworking. And that's really what Great Western Saw is all about is the knowledge, providing the knowledge. But we found as we got more into metalworking that Great Western Saw, people weren't tying the two together, and that's why we kind of did the split of GWS Industrial, which is more of our commercial side, more business to business. And we of course would do the CNC woodworking machines off that as well, and then we do a lot of metalworking, a lot of TIG stuff, Fronius, Arcroid. The new real exciting one is Cobots and the Vectus welding system, which is an interesting way how I stumbled onto that. And what we want to do is we want to be, there is sales is an important part to the trades, and everybody in the trades has that one good sales guy. And when you think about that one good sales guy, what does he do? Well, he's bringing you things that are to make your life easy. He's not just there to sell you, right? Look at this new tool. Look at this new method. A big one is, I mean, I'm guessing we're close to the same age, but do you remember when flap wheels first came on the market?
Absolutely, yeah.
And remember, nobody, we were all like, we're never going to go to flap wheels.
Well, they were like $14 a piece at the time when they first started. You're like, that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous, right? And now they're pretty much industry standard.
Yeah.
Well, now we have a what they call it, a ceramic fiber disc. That, I mean, you start using that, it's cheaper than a flap disc, get for the same life, and it's like, wow, So a good sales guy is going to bring that to his customers and say, this is going to lessen the time you spend. This is how it's going to help you make money, right? It's going to how it helps you with your job. I remember when Makita, everybody had a Makita angle grinder. I mean, I bet you have one in your garage.
I got 3.
Right?
It's the
3,
industry
right?
standard. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It was. And I have a Makita angle grinder too, and the whole bit. And then people started going red, Milwaukee, what have you.
Mm.
I kick myself every time. We have access to Metabo. The Metabo angle grinders are
Yeah, they're
right?
everywhere now. I was at the Iron Workers. They're all out here in Hamilton. They're all Metabo, top to bottom.
Yeah. So where does people out here in the West learn about that, right? Like I've been out east too for business and bringing products out east. Out east has, and we hate to say it as Westerners, and you know that, right? All the Easterners are like, hey, we're cool. It's always kind of that little bit of a rivalry, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we need people out here bringing that technology. Automation out there is all over the place. Cobots and these little Vectus welding systems. All these small shops have them, but out here, guys I can't afford that. I can't afford a robot, or what am I going to do with it? And
at some point, you can't afford to not have it.
Well, it's explaining that and explain how easy it is to use and bringing a demo unit in and saying, look, you're doing. I have one company that builds docks, and the foot for the dock, all it is a piece of round pipe and a piece of flat plate. Like
Same weld every day, all day. Yeah.
Right. So you set up a jig, hit go, it does it, right? So your return on investment is only a couple months on that. And it's not about replacing people. Everybody gets it. Oh, it's replace. No, it's about keeping people, because there's a labor shortage right now. There really is. And everywhere, not just the trades. And when guys get that job, like in my day, when you started, you got jobs, and you accepted it.
That's
right?
how you built. Yeah.
And that's how you grew. Nowadays, if you give these guys the crap jobs, they quit on you. And they move on to the next guy or the whole bit. And so how do we make that, how do we keep those guys, and how do we get more people interested in the trades? Well, if you told me, in high school, you get to program this robot, and it's like a great big Armatron for older people, you know what an Armatron is, right? And play with this all day. Well, heck yeah, that's fun. The training on it was fun. We had a great time, right?
Yeah. Getting it to weld your name onto a plate and all the fun little things you get to do. Yeah.
Or figuring how, well, see, I'm a bit different. I'm weird that way. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do it, I want 2 tables so I can have one welding while I'm fixturing the next one, right? How it's that machine shop mentality, how to time is money, right? Like that's the other thing we talked about, working at Dairy Queen as opposed to working in the trades. And then this is going to sound very boastful, and it's not. I have never worked for minimum wage. I don't know what minimum wage is, right? And I've very rarely, I've been very fortunate that with trade skills and stuff like that, I've always gotten paid well for what I do. So that's kind of what we do. We got into that kind of stuff. We carry Javelin, and we're always looking for new things. So if it's something that people are using but they can't get, let me know. I'll figure out how to bring it in, right?
So for a company it's not in that space, right? there's the Lindy's and the Messers and the Valens and all these, the companies that are out there. And there's lots of new companies coming up there. There's the Banditos, there's the Canada Welding Supply.
Yeah.
Like when you're looking to get into the same space, how do you decide who you're going to partner up with and what you want to put on the shelf? And how do you know which to copy and what not to copy?
A good question. I listened to a podcast from CWB when they interviewed the Banditos guy, and I took a lot from that. And I was like, okay. And so how I do that is I will not sell something that I wouldn't personally use in the field. Right. And we stand by that here. We're not even just for metalworking, for woodworking. All our guys work on the tools. We're not gonna, if it's a cheap tool, I'm gonna tell you it's cheap and why you shouldn't buy it. Right. I'm not gonna necessarily upsell you. Before this call, we had a guy coming here looking at the 285 amp MIG welder, and it's huge for what he needs. He's never going to use it. 180 amp is more than enough, right? So I look at it as my job to get him the right tool. So how I look at things is, first of all, we have a whole checklist that we go through, because we want to make money. So is there margin in it?
Mhm.
Is it a reputable vendor? Do they stand behind their products? Right? What are people using in the industry? What are their qualifications? ArcDroid, for example, before we listed ArcDroid, I talked to Andrew quite a bit. We brought one in. I took it to my garage and abused the out of it,
Yeah.
right?
And they're still
literally
hard to
abused
get.
it.
They're like almost like an internet thing right
Oh,
now.
dude, I have 20 right over there.
Yeah.
You want? I got 20 literally sitting right outside my office, right? Because again, that's another thing we do is we stock it. We're not just ordering it from China, right? We're not ordering on demand, and it takes money to do that. Don't get me wrong, but we're building up that customer base through our service and through our. My guys might not have all the answers, and sometimes they don't. So they'll tell the customer, I don't know. Let me talk to Ben. If I don't know, I have people I can reach out to. I got people in industry. I reach out to the vendor reps. I got some really good vendor reps. And that's the other thing I look for too, is a knowledgeable vendor rep that knows about the industry. Right? One of my better reps, he worked as a fitter. He knows about welding, right? He understands that, and he understands TIG, and he understands, so you can reach out to him for questions. My abrasive guys, I've learned so much about abrasives in the past little while that, yeah, I was using them wrong, right? So it's learning that, and it's bringing the vendors on, and it's testing the tools. We got a whole video series we haven't released yet where we brought the fine rep up here, and I'm like, bring the tools, let's use them. Right? They got a phenomenal drill that I'm drilling over right now, and I've used this stuff. So like,
Yeah,
that's the
it's
thing.
cool.
Like,
I want to play with it. Yeah.
yeah, and I play with it, and I try it hard, and I abuse it. Right? Like they bring in abrasive discs. I get vendors every day trying to sell me abrasives. Like, okay, give me a couple samples, and I abuse them. I use them. Right? And if they don't stand up, I'm not bringing those in. Right?
I remember years ago, I'd say 20 years ago, I was welding in a shop, and some I think it was like a Snap-on or a Mac. The trucks roll in to make everyone
Yep.
spend their money. And they were getting into the 5-inch grinder game, which I don't even know if they're in anymore. I don't even know if they make them anymore. I think it was a failed experiment, but I remember them being like, hey, we got these 5-inch grinders, they're like $500. They're so awesome with braking systems and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, well, let's try one out, and got one. And I leaned on it and I stalled it out, right? I stalled it out. And the guy's like, well, you're not supposed to lean on it like that. And I'm like, well, then it shouldn't be in a welding shop. Because
Right?
let me tell you, that $150 Makita I got over there, I could stand on that thing and she ain't stalling
And
out.
she'll keep turning.
But yeah. So like, and that's the type of tools we need. So it's a beautiful tool. It looks nice. Maybe it's good for a hobbyist, but for this industrial setting, and then like, I remember, what's the other brand that came over? I have Hitachi. I got a Hitachi grinder. I don't even know if they ever made them again. But I got
still
a
make them.
Hitachi.
Yeah.
I got this Hitachi grinder. I still have it. It's been like 18 years. I still have this thing, and I still can lean on it. I swear, I'm on the second set of brushes in 20 years. One of the best design grinders I've ever had in my life, and I don't see them anywhere in industry.
So Hitachi and Metabo kind of merged.
Okay.
So those are your Metabo grinders, but it's stuff like that, right? And I'm not the Snap-on guy. I'm not the Mac guy,
Yeah.
right? If I bring you something, I'm going to stand by and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to bring you a sample to test. Lean on it, right? like metabo beveling tools that put the bevel in for you, and I'll explain it to you. This is what not to do. Dry cut saws is a big one. So we sell a lot of dry cut saws, and we partnered with a company that were the best out there at the time, and they're expensive, right? And then we partnered with Evolution. Well, I put these saws up to a head-to-head test with the same blade, everything. Let's really test it. And Evolution's way cheaper. It's the way to go, right? So we go with, that's what I recommend now. And they stand behind their tools. So it's providing that proper solution and really looking into it, right? And guys don't know, like I didn't know about Fine till I started here, and they made the first multi-tool, the oscillating tool. So we get one of those, it's amazing. But then they introduced me to their metalworking line. And I'm like, holy cow, like these are better than Metabo. And nobody knows about them. The price point is decent. Like I'm not all about super expensive tools, because I mean, hell, I was at Princess Auto today picking stuff up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a time and place for everybody.
Right tool for the job, and how to buy the tools. But when you're running a welding truck or you're welding a shop and you come in here and you say, Dan, this is what I'm doing. I don't want downtime. Okay, this is what I'm going to recommend. This is why you're spending those dollars. Everybody thinks too, and I was the same way when you get into tool sales. Oh, I'm going to get all these tools cheap. There's not a whole lot of markup on tools.
No.
Right? But you get to help the guy and you find the right tool, and you find the right tool for the application. And sometimes you sell them one and it doesn't work. Well, rather than, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, why is it not working? How can we fix that problem? It's all about solving problems. It's like, I don't know. I do. I have the best job in the world. I love selling this stuff, and I love when guys come in with problems and we solve it. The arc droid, again, how can we use this in different situations?
I've been following them since Kickstarter.
Right.
I'm like a Kickstarter nut. I love following Kickstarter. I love seeing what people are inventing. I love entrepreneurs. I love new business ideas. I've bought cool stuff off Kickstarter just to support people. And then 5 years later, you see their product blow up, and it's like,
right.
I feel like I helped a little bit, like. And it's
I followed them in Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And as they progressed, and I'm like, I'm very fortunate. I have my dream job. I'm very fortunate, and I brought this to the majority business partner. I'm like, look, I think we can sell these. I think there's a niche for it, the whole bit. And I mean, they're not cheap. And when I tell you I'm sitting on 20 of them, that's a lot of dollars in inventory, right? But we started stocking them, and currently we only ship to Canada. We can ship ArcDroid to the US, but again, we have it and we've used it. We can demo it here in the store, right? And it's a good product, and it's going to blow up. And I've talked to Andrew actually when I was out in Mississauga last time. We had lunch with Andrew, and he's a great guy. He's a very smart guy, but he built it for a reason. And there's a lot of cool new things coming out on the ArcDroid that's going to make it even better. So that's a product that's going to blow up. So I'm lucky. I'm in on it. Same with PrimeWeld. PrimeWeld in Canada, they make great machines. You look at the YouTube reviews, I don't think you'll find a bad review. Their customer service is phenomenal. Gene is great to deal with. Like, kind of funny if you're in the Facebook PrimeWeld groups, Gene and Dustin, they're kind of like I don't know, celebrities, right?
The gurus, yeah.
The gurus, because they run the company, they own the company, and that's like where I'm becoming now. I'm PrimeWeld Ben apparently, and that's and it's great. I love it. I support the machine. I have, oh my gosh, 3 of them now in my garage, right? I have the plasma cutter, the MIG, and then the TIG. But it's selling that. And if a guy comes in and he's got a new welding business or whatnot, yeah, I'm going to say, look, this is a great machine to get you started. When you get going, you got to hire those guys that maybe need a bit more help. Now we've got to move you to a Fronius.
Yeah.
And I don't do the engine drive ones. Miller and Lincoln got that market wrapped up, and so it's things like that, and that's how you get into it. That's how we vet products. Like, we're very hands-on when we vet our products, and we talk to our customers who get them afterwards. How's this working out? What's the problems, right? Should we continue carrying this? Because sometimes you don't know. You'll get that weird thing happening. What's the customer support? When we bring a new product in, I literally wait for the first one to fail. So we see if I'm looking at our mission statement here. It's up on my wall, and the big thing is we do what we say, and it's all businesses say that, right? Oh, we stand behind our products. We back that. We do what we say here. Right. And I expect my vendors to be like that. And maybe it's old school. I don't know. I'm not the easiest guy to deal with sometimes, especially as a customer. But but we try and work hard for our customers, and we do what we say, right? We're going to help you out. We're going to figure this out for you. So
let's say you're a young or new to welding. I'm not going to say young because you could switch over to welding at 50 if you want to. And you're looking to get started out, and you are very budget constrained. Like, I mean, that is the reality. My
Yep.
first sets of everything were cheap starting out, you know. How do you work with a customer that doesn't have the financial capabilities and they say, hey, like we like they're listening to this podcast and they're like, hey, I heard of Ben. I live in Saskatoon. I want to go see him. You know, he sounds like an awesome guy. Maybe he can help me get my first little shop outfitted. Do
You know,
have access to that stuff, or do you say, hey, you know what, bro, go to Princess Auto, go to Canadian Tire for this, this, and this, and this, and when you're ready, loop back around for this, or you know, how does it work?
a combination of both, actually.
Yeah.
And so we ship Canada wide with Prime Weld and a lot of that stuff through our e-commerce site. But when a guy comes in or he asks those questions, sometimes I'll be fully honest, I don't always have that time because I'm not in the office. I'm running a few companies. But if they're really cool about it and they say, hey, you know, can you have Ben call me? I'll set up an appointment and I'll talk to him, right? Or I'll get one of my outside sales guys I know can handle it, and we'll discuss that. What are you doing in your shop, right? And I mean, I'm all about the secret. This is the frickin' secret of life, man. And I wish I learned this earlier on. And I probably bastardizing it. I got it from a Zig Ziglar book or something crazy like that. But it's the truth. If you can help everybody else get what they want, you'll have no problems getting what you want. And that's if I can help somebody be better, it's going to make me better. So when a guy comes in, we'll discuss it. Okay, you're starting a small fab shop. You're the one-man show. I don't think you really need a $3,000 bandsaw yet, right? Because you're not doing stack runs. How about we put you into a $700 dry cut saw? This is the benefits: less fit up, time, right? And a lot of new guys when they come here and they're learning how to do it and a lot of new guys in the trades too. You think about time differently, right? You can always make more money. It's easy to make more money. You can never make more time. And when you lose time, you can't get it back, right? So you taught the trades. Good instructors in the trades teach you those time-saving tricks, how to maximize your time, right? At the end of the day, it's all time. So when I talk to these guys starting out, how are we going to maximize your time? And a lot of times I'll say, okay, right now, go to Princess Auto, get this tool, right? It's going to last you, it might not. If it lasts you, great. But it's going to last you long enough to make the money to buy the good tool to invest in the better one.
Yep.
You know, I got die grinders from Princess Auto. They were on sale like 10 years ago at like $12 a piece or something. So I bought 10 of them. So I never had to change a bit in that grind grinder. And I was doing aluminum, which just kills die grinders. I think I have 2 or 3 left. Well, frick, that $120, $150 paid for the investment numerous times, right?
I have a Power Fist die grinder from forever ago, and people are like, how does this thing keep running? I'm like, I oil it, I clean it,
right?
I take care
Proper
of it.
Maintenance.
Yeah. Like,
so that's the other thing we do too. Like we're a conglomeration of stuff, and we're actually, one of our companies is a tool organization company. And that's the other thing I pass on to new guys. And that's the biggest thing. Okay, working in a machine shop, machinists are anal retentively organized, right? But that saves you money, right? Kaizen foam, one of the best inventions ever. It's, you know, you can get it in different colors, but when you pull that tool out, it's bright red or it's orange or yellow. You know you're missing that tool. And when you put it back in, it's stored. It's not going to roll onto your toolbox. I had a journeyman who said, if it takes longer than 10 seconds to find that tool, you're losing money, right? So that's how I help with the new guys. And how do you set it up? How do you, and I'm more than happy. Like I love when people are getting into welding and getting into metalworking, be it professionally or as a hobbyist, right? But the best thing with hobbyists is, what are you building, man? Because I want to know. Like, I like to build stuff too.
Yeah.
So
Is it
what are you
cool?
building? Like, send me pictures. I want to see this because it's cool. We got a guy who has a YouTube channel in Regina. His name is Cody Customs, and he did this like insane lawnmower. Now he's building this custom doom buggy. And I'm like, that's cool, man. And he doesn't know what he's doing. He's learning as he goes. And the odd time I'll call him up. I'm like, hey, next time you're centering this is an old millwright trick. He's like, oh man, I wish, right? That's actually probably the biggest thing I miss from the trades is being able to pass on what I know to the younger guys, right? And then being in that environment. Now I'm doing a little bit different, I guess, in business, but it's not the same. And it's just so lighting that fire and getting these new guys are in and I mean, SAS Polytech is right here in Saskatoon, and we get guys who are going through the program, and they're like, "Whoa, I want to practice. I need this." What are you practicing? What are you practicing for? Right? Okay, this is the machine, right? Especially with MIG welders, everyone's like, "Wow, I'm going to get this one." That's a flux core only, man. $780, and I get you one that can run flux core, or gas, solid wire gas, and you're set, and it'll run arc, right? You're set because you need to learn all the processes.
Yeah,
right?
eventually.
And there's a time and place for flux core. There definitely is, and there's a time, right? And you need to have that flexibility. I'm not a big fan of some of the pro point welders for the simple fact is consumables. Nobody ever thinks about that, right?
Finding
so get
the
a weld,
tips and nozzles
finding the
later.
tips and the
Good luck.
nozzles.
Yeah.
So all the prime weld stuff. One of the reasons, I hate to keep bringing up prime weld, but I am a prime weld fanboy, I guess you can say. Tweako consumables and all the MIG welders. Get those things anywhere. Right? All the TIG welders come out of the box with CK Worldwide torches. I'm sorry, I'm definitely a CK fan. I have they own a lot of my money because I bought a lot of their torches, right?
I got some cheap Alibaba welder that I picked up online, but it runs like I have it running all on CK stuff. It works great. Yeah.
Right? You're gonna have to. We don't have a whole metalworking section in Regina yet. We're building up, but you're gonna have to pop in Saskatoon sometime because there'll be stuff you'll drool over here, and it's helping those guys out. And it's even the guys who've been doing it for a while, right? What is your struggle? How can I save you some time, make you some more money? That's where the whole Vectus welding systems come in, right? Or the arc droid. You're a one-man show, or even you're a small shop, you got to maximize that time, right? And hard facing. Have you ever met a welder that likes hard facing? Gotta be the most boring job ever.
I kind of dug it.
Really?
Yeah, because it's just when you get into the really like hard nickels and stuff, some guys can make a real mess of it, but if you get good at it, you can lay it in pretty nice.
That's one of the things I love about welding. Hey, like there's such a wide variety of it, and having that challenge to get really good at like a weird alloy or really weird thing, like it's all, I don't know.
Like you crack a bottle of like Nyrod and it's telling you to run it at 90 amps, and you try it at 90 amps and it doesn't go anywhere. Then you try it at 150 and it just burns in nice. It's like they lied.
It just
to
lays
me.
in. Yeah. But that's the thing. So, and that's I love what I do. Like I am very passionate about what I do, and I love it. I legit look forward to coming to work in the morning. And I put long hours in. Like I'm sure my family sometimes regrets it, but I love what I do, right? And it's for a good cause. And then in my spare time, I'm using the same tools and I'm building stuff. So like those new guys, yeah, it's great. What are you building? How can I help you out? Like the hobbyist, and some of these, what I love, and we've had a few of these, and this is like super awesome, is the grandpa will come in. I'm retired. I want to start welding now. And the 16 or 17-year-old grandson is picking up on this. And he's like, I really enjoy this. All right, how do we foster that? How do we give him the proper impression of going into the trade? And again, not, pumping your tires. I tell them to listen to this podcast. Look when they're interviewing some of these young welders and what they say, because you got to know both sides of it. Like you can make good money, but there's a trade-off.
It's tough. Yeah,
it's tough. You got to hustle your right. You're going to be tired. You're going to be dirty. You're going to be wet, right? You're going to live a camp in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of weirdos, and the guy in the room next to you is going to snore so loud the whole bloody trailer shakes, right? But that's embrace the suck. You get to do some cool things. When I worked in the oil patch mill writing, I got to see some. I worked in the Arctic, and I'm lucky I traveled the Arctic with the military, but I worked all over. And I talked to some of these welders, and they get that B pressure ticket and some of that, and they're going like international. And I'm like, man, if I would have known that at 16, screw this army business. I could have made way more money and seen the same places. But and it
sounded like you needed some structure though.
I did. I don't regret it. The army was good for me. It taught me a lot of things, and I was I needed that structure. I needed to learn that discipline and learn those skills that it gave me, right? But it's the world's open out there, and especially with women in trades, I love that too. Like it's in my previous job I worked at, one of the shops I went to, there was a young woman who worked there, and they were building grain bins, and she was phenomenal, man. She was faster than the guys and better than the guys, and I loved it, right? And it was awesome. She went on to a better position, which is great, right? But that's what's so cool about the trades is if you have that mentality that you want to improve and you legit want to improve and you work at it, sky's the limit, man.
Yeah.
Right. You know, everybody asks me, well, how do I get to be a better TIG welder? Put the hours in, get the stick time.
Yeah.
You'll become better, you know.
There's no way
weld
around
at
it.
home,
And it doesn't matter what you are, you're an accountant, whatever. It's time. You got to put time in. That's the only way to get better. Yeah.
right? And it's a skill you have. Like it comes back.
Yeah.
When I couldn't use my hands very well and I wasn't able to do that, and I started striking arcs again, I was down at SIT in Regina, and the instructor there, he's awesome. I can't think of his name right now, but
Heath Bigalki.
Keith, yeah, he's great, right? He's a great guy.
Fantastic.
Like,
Yeah.
love dealing with him. And he's like, hey, run an arc on this machine. I'm like, man, like I'm embarrassed. He's like, just give it a try. And he's like, wow, that's pretty good. Like you haven't done, and looked at the bead and whatnot, and it's awesome. And it's I don't know,
2 or 3 beads later, 2 or 3 rods later, it comes back.
and you're good to go, right? So I'm doing some framework here and then some body work, and I'm teaching one of my employees to weld because he's never seen a welder before, right? And it's cool to teach. And he's really excited about it. He's like, how can you do like that so quick? And I'm like, time. I put a lot of hours in to get to this point, right?
Yeah.
So and so yeah, like helping the new guys out, weld at home the whole bit, and you can build cool things. I mean, come on, even as an adult, building a go-kart's cool, right?
Yeah, and even like the flower pot for your aunt or the center. There's a bazillion fun things.
Right?
Like as soon as I got my first welder when I was, I think 17, when I got my first welder, it was like, hey, now you're gonna fix the lawn chair and the kitchen table, and
Yeah.
sure, it all practice, it all works. You
You
blow
get
your
a
whole-
welder.
yeah.
This is what I've learned. You get a welder and your neighborhood learns that you have a welder. When your garage door is open, you'll have a stream of people coming to ask you to
Yep.
fix stuff.
I
And when
fixed
you're
my neighbor's
started out-
chairs the other day.
Yeah, when you're starting out, fix it. Don't charge
Yeah.
the guy. He might give you $20, but don't,
Take
Wait
a
till you
beer,
build up
take a
that
beer.
skill set.
Yeah,
and then you can go. And then there's nothing you can't fix. Like it's
yeah.
how does that saying go with welders? We can fix anything but the
broken
crack
heart.
of dawn and a broken heart,
Yeah, yeah.
and and enjoy it and be proud of it. That's the biggest thing I tell young guys too when they're coming through is, people are may slag on you because you're in the trades. Be proud of what you're doing because they can't do it.
They're just jelly.
Right.
That's just
And it's I don't know. I don't know, we probably run time. I know it's everybody's, we still got time.
jelly.
But well, I just noted I have a window that faces out and all my staff is leaving. I'm like, I wonder what time it is, right? But it's yeah, so helping out new guys, helping out how the shops, the small shops, and the big shops too. You need to automate a process of pick and place for taking a part of a CNC machine and putting a new piece in.
Well, how far do you
Talk
go
to me.
now? Like, well, how far do you go? Like, I mean, there's limits. There's limits of space. There's limits of like square footage of investment money. Like, are you going to be lining up, 30-foot robots outside in the parking lot? Like, where do you see it going?
I want to be the automation guy for Western Canada. I want to be the guy that revolutionizes this industry. I want to be the guy that when a shop sets up and they get a big contract and like, how are we going to do this? I'm the guy, right? And if I need more warehouse space where I have to get to the point where I'm bringing in 5-axis Haas mills or whatnot, I will do that. We're slowly getting there, but what I want is I want it to be like Ontario, where every third shop has one of these cobots in their welding shop.
Yeah, I was playing with one yesterday.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I want to see it. And we can afford it out here. We can do it. And the West has built a lot of cool stuff.
Well,
Right?
the
There's a
West,
lot
we
of-
got the money. We got the money. That's not a
We
problem.
got the money.
Yeah.
Let's get the automation happening. Right. Let's catch up. We build mining trucks here. We build, tons of ag equipment. We build all kinds of great stuff. We got helium plants going up. We got lithium separation plants, which with turbines and whatnot. Why aren't we manufacturing that stuff here? We got the capabilities. We got the machine shops.
Yeah.
And we got the talent.
Look at J&E. Look at what they're doing in Saskatoon. Like, unreal.
Phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
They're just down the street from me here. And the stuff they're doing is phenomenal, right? You look at Dyna Industrial, you look at Demers outside of Regina and the old
Yeah.
cookie plant, right?
Yeah. I
You know,
worked
we
at
got
Dyna for 10 years when I was a kid, man. Some of the funnest stuff I ever built.
look at New Holland. It used to be FlexiCoil here, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the stuff they're doing there, and there's room for automation there as well. We got a lot of cool stuff happening. Let's get more, and we've always had. There's a and one day, this is on my bucket list, even though I grew up around there and never been there. In Rocanville, there's an oil can museum about this dude who invented like the best oil can, right? You know, remember Morris Rodweed or Morris Industries,
Morris Industries, yeah, I remember.
right?
Yeah.
Like I remember Mr. Morris, the guy who started it, and the stuff that they did, and Leon's manufacturing, and like we can manufacture here, but in order to be competitive, we need to automate. We need to get some of these new systems. We got you know, the technology is dumbed down so much now that
Yeah. And entrepreneurs. We need lots of entrepreneurs. We need people to not be scared to get in the game.
yeah, and go there. I don't know where I'm gonna go from here, but I know my one partner is definitely a serial entrepreneur, and I don't think he'll retire, but he won't fully retire. And I don't look at retiring. I would be bored. I want to keep building, and and it's not about. The interesting thing is, people's like, "Oh, you just want to become rich and whatnot." You know, I do pretty good. I make a pretty good wage. I'm happy. It's not so much about becoming rich. I want to employ more people. I want to better at things, right? You know, I want to be that guy that can donate money to a worthwhile cause, or Skills Canada competitions. I'd like to support that more. Maker spaces. We support makerspace more.
Oh, you
Right?
better be careful what you say to me, buddy. Things, you'll be getting some phone calls in a hurry.
Well, so that's the thing. We
Yeah,
support
yeah.
Makerspace here in Saskatoon,
Yeah.
and it's been a good partnership.
I just
We
was
had
in skills all last week, so like I mean, lots we can do there.
Yeah, so like I mean, and I'm happy for those guys to reach out. That's why
Mhm.
I'm reaching out. The whole reason I reached out for the podcast is we had a customer who came in and bought the Primewell 285, right? And he's involved with you guys, and he's like, "Hey, you know, you could get on this podcast." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, just send me an email." I'm like, "Okay, great," because I want that knowledge out there. I want the guys in Western Canada, and it's not. I want to work with the other small guys. You know, I'm not looking to steal the gas business or whatnot. I'm filling the other niches where they maybe
There's enough
can't.
room for everybody. Business is business.
Yeah, there is. And you know, my competition down the road here, I love them. They're great guys. That's where I go and buy my gas and some of my stuff from, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's I want to grow it and grow it as an industry, right? You know, the gas giants have a lot of power, unfortunately. So especially in the welding industry. But if
Yeah.
us little guys get together, there's strength in numbers, right?
There
You
is,
know, and it takes leadership and it takes time, and it takes the guys to have I'm a
yeah.
risk
Like the
taker.
desire, yeah.
The desire and being able to take that risk, right? Like you
Yeah.
got to put some money on the line, and it's terrifying some days, and it's good other days, right? And
That's
then
just
you got to have
money.
the passion for it, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's a big
absolutely.
thing too. And I was always taught as a kid, you bring your passion with you. Don't follow your passion, bring your passion with you, right? And you know, there's things I was looking at. We deal in Wira, and they're a tool company, right? And they have these wrenches called the Joker wrenches. And I bring my set here, just keep on my desk. So when guys like you or something come in, I'm like, I got to show you a cool trick, right? And I get all excited about these wrenches. If you ever have to put a nut in a blind spot, they'll actually hold the nut for you. They're phenomenal. They just blow the snap-on and Mac guys away. And like I love talking, and when I talk about them, and guys are like, oh, this is awesome. Okay, we'll sell you a set, right? But it's not that I want to sell you. It's like I want to show you, like, look how this can benefit you, right?
Well,
You
I feel
know?
like if I come visit you at your store, I better bring an empty credit card. So
Yeah, there's stuff you'll want. We're getting there. Tube benders was a big one for me because I was so sick and tired of using Princess Auto tube kinkers.
yeah.
So I looked for a good tube bender, and I tried a bunch of them, and I was not satisfied with the result. I'm very picky. I wanted JD squared. They didn't want to work with me. So I found the equivalent of JD squared, actually the partner of JD squared, Pro Tools. So I have tube benders, and they're awesome. No kinks, no striations, bend DOM tubing, perfect, right? You know, but that's the thing. You got to have that passion for it, and you gotta have that desire. So why did I bring those in? Because if I sell that to you, I know you're gonna have no problems with it. I know you're gonna like it, right? Well, it's a bit more expensive. It is. I'll show you why it'll save you that time, right?
Yeah.
But then a new guy comes in and says, I can't afford that. Okay, well, I'll tell you how I used to do it. Pack the tube full of sand, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
All right, buddy. Well, we're coming up on the end here of the interview. We could probably talk for freaking 3 days here.
Oh,
But
probably. Yeah.
and I definitely will be up in I'm up in Saskatoon every few weeks, so I'll
Yeah. Pop
definitely
in,
stop
let me
by and
know.
visit. Yeah.
Pop in, bug Mike in Regina, tell him who you are.
Okay.
And
Will
there's
do.
some of the prime welds there and whatnot, and he can walk you through a few
Well, I'm
things.
still on the road for a couple more weeks, but when I finally get home, I got a couple months in town where I'm not traveling, so I'll definitely
Sweet.
have to do some connections.
Yeah, I'm in Regina generally once a month or more. So yeah, but
Cool.
let me know. And
So let's finish this off with some questions in terms of where your passion is now in terms of giving back and getting involved and being in part of the industry. The first question is, what do you see lacking? What's lacking in the industry? What's lacking for the people that are young or new to welding to really help them get started? What do you see, if someone's listening to this and they say, like, I want to get into this, what's the warning that you can give them saying, like, hey, if you want to get into this, make sure that you cover this space?
yeah, so getting into the industry, especially welding, from like a tradesperson point of view, is if you want to get into it, it's not going to be easy. That's my biggest thing, right? And you have to have a mindset. So my kid will tell you this. He's a bit of a parrot. What I always do is I ask him, why do you do the hard thing? And the answer is because it's hard. And that's a true mindset. So if you do the easy things all the time, you train yourself to do the easy things. You need to build that discipline to do the hard things. So do the hard things. And it's as simple as start backing into your parking spot, because it's not easy. Right. And when you get in the trades, you're gonna probably have to do it on any site anyways, right? First move forward. But look for those harder things. And it's a mindset. It's like the military. Why do we have to make our beds so we can bounce a quarter off of it? That has nothing to do with combat. It's to build that discipline to do the hard thing, right? And that's the key. Discipline's a muscle. You have to exercise it, and you have to exercise it every day. Because I'm going to tell you, no matter what job you get, and it doesn't matter. I'm very fortunate now where I'm at, but there's days where you're not going to want to get out of bed. Your body's going to hurt, right? And I still get that. But if you have that mindset, I'm going to do the hard thing, and you push through it, and you get enjoyment and satisfaction out of doing the hard thing, that's how you succeed.
Then everything else
Right?
is easy. Yeah.
Everything else is easy, right? The only easy day was yesterday, SAS model.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. And you got to look at it that way, right? Here's another piece of advice. This is old school advice. Take the job that nobody else likes and do it better.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember thinking that about gouging. Everyone was like, gouging sucks.
Gouging,
Gouging
yes.
sucks. And I was like, you know what? I want to get into this. And I just took away the thought of what everyone else was saying and just looked at it as a process. And it's a rad process. And you can get
It is,
really
isn't it?
good at it. And then I became the guy that was good at gouging. And then when layoff time came around, guess who's not getting laid off? Me.
Right.
Right? Because I have more skills and I'm not complaining about that thing. I actually enjoy it. I push in my earplugs in a little deeper, get a little bit more deaf, and I get out there and I could spend the whole day on that thing and just the day would fly by. Like,
And that's the mindset again. It's getting into that mindset and just doing it, right? If
Yeah.
there's nothing to do, pick up a broom, sweep, and clean. Right? I have never met a shop owner in my life that has given somebody for getting on a broom.
Yeah.
Right? End of the day, put your tools away, clean up your tools, right? And take pride in your work, because you'll get better at it, but be proud of it, right? You see, if you ever follow like the welding memes and whatnot, you see all these, welds from China, this, that, the other. I get it, and they're ugly. And as a welder, and I know you do it because every welder does it. I do it. My wife always complains. Whenever you look at a railing or something, you immediately are drawn to the bad weld.
you're checking.
Right?
Yeah, you're checking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not a bad thing to get into, and be proud of it. But yeah, the biggest thing is do the hard thing because it's hard, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good key to life. It's a discipline thing. That's my number one thing. And I'm not saying that you're going to be abused or anything, but take that hard thing and go on, right?
And then my last question to you is, take that same question, now apply it to sales. Someone that's getting into the sales game. You got into the sales game later through industry, but you're going to work with young salespeople coming in with no experience and nothing, right? So what's a piece of advice for someone that wants to get into the industrial sales game?
So industrial sales, very rewarding, right? My first piece of advice about going to sales is you got to remember that everybody's had a bad experience with a salesperson. Don't be a salesperson. Be a solution provider. Your job there is to solve your customer's problem. And if you solve your customer's problem, by even maybe it's not your sale, maybe it is, hey, you should get that from Princess Auto or whatnot. I guarantee that customer will come back to you, right? And you gotta, again, it goes back to doing the hard thing. And the hardest thing about doing sales is cold calling. Nobody likes cold calling. I love cold calling. And I look for that guy that's going to slam the door in my face and yell at me, right? Because I have a perfect line for it. Because every time that happens, I say, right on, thank you so much, sir. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, the odds are 1 in 10 is going to do that. So my next 9 calls are going to be carefree, right? And just, and you build that. Then when you do that, a lot of times that guy will talk to you, right? Don't be the salesy guy. You're not there. These guys don't have time for that, especially industrial sales. Your job is to make them make money, more money, right? And you have to look at that, solve this, be a solution provider. How can I help you? What's the problem? What's taking too much time, right? And it's not all about price. Don't worry about price, right? Because if you can justify it, the return on investment, things like that, business owners get that. And, you look at some of these cobot Vectus welding systems, let's say 70 grand. Well, that's a lot of money, right? That's not even a year's salary though. It can work 12 hours a day, 24 hours a day. What's the return on investment? How long before it pays back on these parts, right? Especially cobots. It's a unique thing because doesn't just have to do one part. You can, their whole thing is like small runs, maximum variety.
Yeah.
So, but that's, again, do the hard thing and be the solution provider. Don't be the sales guy, right?
Awesome.
And if you don't know, research. The guys on the field, they don't have time to do the Googling and the research. They would like to, but they don't. Do the research. Keep some of those links. Pass them on to them. They'll appreciate that, right?
That's why they're asking.
That's why they're asking. That's your job. You're the guy. You should know that stuff. And if they ever offer you to use a tool or use the process and you don't have that background, do it. Learn how to use it, right? Spend a day in their shoes. It'll benefit your sales career. So.
Well, thanks a lot, Ben. This has been super informative. I think the audience is going to love. You had a lot of good one-liners in there, so we'll be able to.
I'm good for sound bites. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you got a few. So everyone, if you're interested, Ben Schmidt's in Saskatoon, but the company he works for is GWS Industrial. With their you can find them online, so check them out. And when this gets released, social media and all the tags will be up on there, so people can check them out.
Yeah, and if you're building cool stuff, let me know. I'd love to see it because I'm all about the cool stuff that you guys are building out there. So
awesome. All right, Ben, thank you very much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, for all the people out there that have been watching and following along, please download, share, comment, especially comment. I want to know what you're thinking. And, if you're like Ben, just reach out if you want to be on the show or if you know someone that you think would be a great story. We're always looking, and we don't really say no to anyone because I just love to blab. So, it's if you got the gumption to get on here, I'm willing to hear your story and talk to you about it. So make sure you reach out to us here at the CWB Association podcast and stay tuned for the next one.
We hope you enjoyed the show.